Good morning. It's 9 a.m. Monday, September 11th, 2023. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve claims dated September 11th, 2023 in the amount of $1,100,346.56.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the August 28th, 2023 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Correspondence. Jeff, do you have anything?
Yeah, I had probably, I forgot to count, 10 or 11 emails concerning the proposed, the land purchase and the law enforcement facility. I had a phone call from Chad Holliday as well. That was pretty much it.
Okay. I had the same. Danny?
Same here. Several calls and emails in regards to that training facility.
Okay. Committee reports, Jeff?
None.
I had none. Danny?
9/5 kickoff to the Iowa Housing Conference in Cedar Rapids. I attended that. 9/6 full board meeting at Power and Water for Chamber. That's all I had.
Okay. Next is items with the administration office. First is discussion and possible action to approve and authorize the chair to sign an EDA grant extension request for the Muscatine Levee Improvement Project.
This is just a second extension request. That has to do with the time that it's taking for things to go through the review process and get approval by the Corps of Engineer and such.
I'll move the approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nancy, when does our funding on that sunset? 26, was it?
I believe so. I can tell you that this still keeps us within our window.
Okay. Next is discussion and possible action to approve a renewal agreement for HIPAA compliance services with Car Cost Compliance Solutions in the amount of $14,580.
This is just a renewal of the agreement that we already have in place. This company helped us put together our whole HIPAA program and policies and procedures, and then they do send out random testing for employees, and we review some of those processes and update those processes, and then if we ever have a HIPAA breach, they will come in and defend us and help document that we legitimately have all of the protections in place, reasonable protections in place to protect the HIPAA information.
I'll move the approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Anything other, Nancy?
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. Next is receive information from county employees. Do I have any county employees that would wish to address the board? Brandon?
Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
Randy Spees, Muscatine County Assessor. Looks like we're gonna get a equalization order from the state, so I wanted to bring that down and talk to you about it. We're gonna have to send out postage. It's gonna be a 6% on residential properties and multi-residential properties. And in that residential package, it also includes all farm dwellings, so it'll be just on the dwellings on the ag side, nothing on the land, and then on the residential side, we'll apply the 6% to the dwelling and land portions of the properties. But we're gonna have to notify all the public, so we have to send out a postcard showing the 6% increase. Tybee and I put together a postcard that we're gonna have to mail out, so we're gonna have a little extra expense in the auditor's budget for mailing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, very good.
All
And
right.
that's for the
2023 year. At the time when I sent stuff to publication last spring, I was about 100 sales short of what actually came through for 23. And then with what the Board of Review did last spring, brought our numbers below compliance, so that's why we're getting that 6%.
So everybody is certified taxes for 23, correct?
Correct, yes.
So now if you get a 6% valuation increase,
You're gonna have more valuation to draw from. So the new, but there'll be the new rollback and stuff that'll come into play
will the
there.
rollback pull that down?
It'll pull it down.
So it would go back to kind of what everybody budgeted on, or is that something we have to have a look at?
Well, you'll probably have to take a quick look at it, but it should be close. Because the rollback's gonna go from 56% down to around 46%, so it's quite a change there too. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on the extra postage that the auditor's office is gonna have to come up with.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Morning, Jim.
Just a quick update, we did get some information last week relative to the 245th Street Bridge. Here it is. There's a bit of information to digest. I reached out last week to the committee that's been appointed by the board to take a look at that. My intention is, with Kurt's being one of the committee members and being gone this week, trying to get a meeting set up next week so we can get in a position to get back to the board with a report on, from the committee as to next steps forward. So I just wanted to give you an update to get out ahead of that. I know we've been waiting on these and we've been delayed a couple of times, but they did come in last week and we have that information now.
Okay,
Any questions? Thank you.
very good, thank you.
Jim.
Do I have any other county employees that wish to address the board at this time?
I have a statement to make.
Yes.
The Drainage District 13 pump project, the final tax assessment notices went out in the mail last week. So the parcel owners owning property in Drainage District 13 would have received a separate tax statement. It's not due until next September 2024. If you have any questions on that, you can reach out to the treasurer's office. Depending on your tax your assessment notice, you may be able to put it on a payment plan, but they can review that with the parcel owners. And also there is going to be a completion hearing on the pump project on September 25th. And that was also included with the tax notice. And any questions about the pump project or that hearing, they can reach out to the Drainage District Trustee Chair of Rod McNeil. If they call our office or they call the Treasurer's office, we also have all that information as far as the numbers of who to call.
It looked like the second payment on those was quite larger than the first, but that can be broken up. Isn't that broken up over X amount of years to pay that?
If your tax assessment is over $500 per parcel, it can be put on a payment plan over 10-year period. You need to contact the Treasurer's office
Okay.
in order to set up that payment.
Okay,
Okay.
very good, thank you. Do I have any other county employees that wish to address the board at this time? Seeing no one come forward. Receive comments from the public. Do I have anyone from the public that wish to address the board at this time?
Jerry Carson, 2440 Edgewater
Today,
Road.
because of the large group we have, I want to run 3-minute time frames. That's your allotment of time.
Okay, that's fine, and I wanted to get done because I could see you were busy. I just wanted to ask that, so it sounds like Jim's moving on things, and that's good, and I appreciate it. I was hoping that, once you guys kind of get to a point where you're gonna discuss it openly, if you could please contact all the property and homeowners that would be affected by any decisions made, and maybe put it on the agenda so that we can be here.
Absolutely, any action taken by the board or presentation to the board will be in a public hearing, unless otherwise closed under the statute. It'll be done in public and the people impacted will get notice.
Okay, thank you much.
Thanks, Jerry.
I'm gonna leave because you got a lot going on.
All right. Thank
Come
you.
on, Jerry.
All right. Do I have any other that would like to address the board at this time? State your name and address. I will allow 3 minutes.
Okay, Charlie Lewis. I live at 112 Van Horn Street here in Muscatine. And then I own the 29 acres directly behind the proposed shooting range. I got a couple notes here on my phone real quick. So on the meeting minutes from May 22nd, 2023, it says that there was a parcel of land that was listed and considered to be purchased for $43,000. Where was that actually located, and was that actually discussed?
I'm not aware of that piece of ground.
Probably what was the date of that?
May 22nd, 2023. And then it says that cost will be shared between the city and county. The next step was to move forward with the closed meeting. So that was never discussed or anything?
I don't recall a discussion on a piece of ground for $43,000. So we'll have to look into that.
Okay. And then another statement there made by Mr. Keys saying that this would be exclusively used by the Muscatine County and the Muscatine City Police for mandatory training. In the last meeting, Mr. Reese said that their guys would use it whenever they want, even on their off time. So when that was voted through, when you guys voted that through, was that under the assumption that it would just be mandatory training for the law enforcement departments? Or did that change somewhere after that, or was that
So
discussed?
I don't recall the sheriff saying that the last meeting. If he did, I don't recall that being said. But the way I understand it, there's gonna be 30 or 40 times a year and that training will be split up between the police and the sheriff department. And if we get to the point that this facility comes together, we will try to put an ordinance in place that has the sheriff department and the police department work with landowners to know the times or notification when these things will happen. But shooting outside of that timeline of that 30 or 40 days, we would probably have it in there to have it laid out so
Yeah,
we're
I
not
think the
shooting
sheriff,
just
I think
anytime they
what I
want.
heard him saying, I think the original intention of it was a law enforcement training facility, and there is a certification. The question is, I've heard all kinds of numbers, and I don't know where they're coming from.
Sure.
It was something I'd asked the sheriff, and I haven't seen anything back, but I think he's got one of his lieutenants or captains putting together a schedule of training that they would do. My understanding is they have to go through a certification shoot, and there's X number a year. I thought the number was 12 to 13, and I don't know where the 30 to 40 came from. That's not a number I'd heard anywhere officially. And I think that's a challenge with everything. There seems to be a lot of numbers out there that I haven't heard, and I don't know where they're coming from. So I think that's a question to the sheriff and the chief as to exactly, what this board is told is a law enforcement training facility. When you talk about training, it's not all shooting. There's, other use of force. There's baton, there's taser, things like that. So that's considered in their certifications and training. And I don't know if that's indoor, outdoor, all of that. So that's what we know to date. We've really been just privy to, there were a number, I don't think we were ever even made aware of what parcels were available for consideration. We were just made aware, hey, we've got a parcel where we've got a willing landowner. Can we have authorization to go ahead and try to get a deal done? We didn't even know where the land was, quite frankly, and I don't really want to know. And then they came back with, when they actually had an agreement. I think that's what we had closed session on, was when we actually had a formal agreement. We could look at that and discuss with our attorney. And that's been pretty much the extent of this board's involvement to date.
So for me, I had talked to Tony and the sheriff, and Tony did say it may be around 30 times a year. I believe the last meeting, the sheriff did make a comment around 30 or 40. I think he said that when he was standing over here in the corner. So that's probably where they're getting that 30 or 40. And
Yeah.
so what I'm understanding, it's gonna be around that number.
With one of the reasons for me purchasing this timber back there was that for recreation, build a retirement home out there eventually. And one of the reasons, back off the road, surrounded by farm ground, where nothing could ever be built around me. The CSR ground is high. according to county code, no, that cannot be switched over to residential. Never in my dreams I would have thought I would have had a shooting range in my front yard shooting into my potential home 30 to 40 times a year. I mean, I get there's gonna be a berm and stuff like that. Accidents do happen, they're uncontrolled. It's not gonna be much of a home life if I get a retirement home built out there.
Unfortunately, in this case, on a government facility, CSR rating is not a factor in their decision-making process if it's a government facility, so.
Is that a statewide,
Eric?
law or just county?
The state code doesn't address criteria for design or parcel selection, it simply says that the zoning commission is required to review and approve any site that's included purchase or used as a shooting range. It doesn't, and then any political subdivision like a city or county to rewrite additional local ordinances that can address land use to include things like soil values, but there's nothing to address the soil value, which is state code, which is the only code that deals with law enforcement ranges.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do I have anyone else from the public that would like to speak? State your name,
I'm taking the hat off, Moose?
address. You'll have 3 minutes.
A little bit. It's all gray now. Aaron Steffens, 2528 150th Street, Moscow. I'm just south of this proposed shooting range. And I am right here. This F70, proposed shooting range. I am right here where that arrow points. Okay. So proposed shooting range, Charlie's place, Nature Conservancy, my timber, my house.
Yeah, it's to the north. Yeah.
Sorry, to the north. Yep. To the north.
His map was upside down.
Thank you.
On, just real quick, on Google Earth last night, I ran that same line because I seen you guys quoting that, and that, from what I came up with, it's about a mile to your little house, is that correct? Cause that's
Correct.
that's what it's showing on Google Earth.
Yeah, I mean, if you went around on the roads, but I believe it's about a half mile the way the crow flies.
You went clear to
From
the
this
horse
shooting
facility.
range, yep.
Danny. You
What's
went
that?
clear- You went clear to the horse facility. His is closer.
So I thought I went to the center of that field right to his house and it put it right at 1 mile, but I'd like to see for sure because I'm told that it's not a half mile, and if that is, if it is, it is.
At least 2,300 feet. So, somewhere in there. Pretty sure it's less than a mile, pretty sure it's close to half a mile. I sent an email to you supervisors this morning, and I spoke at the city council meeting last week. I'll just read my email to you. I think there should be enough time to do this. I don't know if you guys received this. I sent this morning. Good morning, supervisors. I'm writing this morning to ask all of you to rescind your vote. I'm not sure how this works. On the land purchase agreement for the proposed shooting range on F70. Will you please rescind your vote on this item, or please make another motion to not move forward with the purchase of this land and proposed shooting range? All of you have tough jobs, but I believe your jobs as supervisors are to listen to the county employees, such as law enforcement, and the citizens of your county. Now that we have found out about the shooting range, the citizens of the county are speaking to you, and we want you to listen to our concerns. From what I understand, at the city council meeting, Mr. Keys spoke about 30, 40 times shooting at that meeting. Mr. Sorensen, I've known you forever, to not want to know where this shooting range might go concerns me a little bit. This is right in my backyard, and you've been a good friend, good business partner for a long time, so I hope you are concerned about where it goes. None of you live close to the site currently, and none of you would want this in your backyard. I have a lot of reasons for not wanting this in my backyard, but I'll keep my email short. I have attached a map of the location of the proposed shooting range I just showed you guys and the proximity to my house. I have 4 young kids, 11, 9, 7, and 4. We are always out in my back timber, which is right next to the conservancy. We walk through that very often. We hunt out there, we walk to the conservancy, we can't hunt out there, but we walk through it. I am scared of ricochets from this. Accidents do happen, as Charlie said, everybody knows this. That cannot be controlled. This would be a disaster for the county if a life was taken or changed because of ricochet or something like that would happen. I understand law enforcement is very safe. I back law enforcement. We teach our kids to respect law enforcement, to respect authority. We're all for that. We're all for the training. But when we're walking back through there, we're enjoying our way of life. I moved out there for a reason. to raise my kids out in the country, to raise them on the farm life, and that's what we're trying to do. We have a very quiet area out there. I made a video Saturday morning. It's super peaceful. Mr. Kirchner is not here today. He enjoys a very peaceful country life. We all want to do the same. Mr. Sorensen, I've known you for 15 years now, and you have been a great guy to me, always listening to me and others, and helped guiding me along my business startup 10 years ago. I voted for you for this supervisor position. I've done quite a bit of business with you, and you have always been a stand-up guy. You are great at listening to others, and I'm asking you to listen more closely to myself and others here about our concerns. These are county citizens. Jeff, will you rescind your vote or make a motion to not move forward with this purchase?
I
Mr.
have
Kirk,
no intention to.
okay. Mr. Kirchner, he's not here, same deal. I know he's got a family, he has grandkids now, he's raised kids. He wouldn't want this in his backyard either. I know he's part of his family. Mr. Sauer, I rented a storage unit from you many years ago. You've been a great guy to me as far as I know you. You wouldn't want this next to your home either. Mr. Chick, I do not know you at all. I voted for you. I voted for all of you, by the way. I voted for you because once upon a time, I believe you worked at GPC, and you were a stand-up guy for the working man at the GPC. I have a lot of respect for you after watching the last supervisor meeting. I watched that. I watched the video. I have a lot of respect for you and how you commented to all the citizens. Same deal, Mr. Chick. Would you rescind your vote, or would you make a motion to not make this purchase?
Scott, I'm gonna advise you, having inked an agreement previously, I don't think it's appropriate for the board legally to make comment on rescinding or doing anything at this juncture.
Yeah, thank you. I just read through my email. So, Mr. Mather, don't know him either. Obviously, he's not here. Basically, said I watched the meeting. He can't vote or take part in this decision based on a relationship with his client. So, that is the gist of my email there. I really do not want this in my backyard for so many reasons. The main one being safety for my kids and how I want to raise my family. We got nuisance concerns with sound, lights, and everything else.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. You have 3 minutes. Do I have someone else from the public that would wish to address the board at this time?
Yes.
State your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Tim Maxwell, 1444 North Isaac. I have 4 dwellings correctly north of the proposed site. Have a couple more dwellings of my family that live a little east of the site. Farm a lot of ground on all sides of the site. So I have a lot invested in this neighborhood. A couple questions I do have for the board is the 21,000. How was that number derived at to purchase this land when it seems extremely high? How did we come to that number? I'm asking you, the board.
To the best of my knowledge, there was a couple sites that were, in the end, that landowners were willing to move forward on. One of them was an 80-acre parcel, and that gentleman, I was told, wanted to sell the whole 80 acres. That may have been at cost. We don't know a figure on that, but it probably would have been in the tune of around $1 million, which was out of our wheelhouse to go forward on. This particular spot, I'm told the gentleman did not want to sell the ground. He was approached, and it'd be like I've told everybody, it'd be like me approaching you to buy your home and you not want to sell it. You're going to inflate that price and tell me if you want it, you're going to pay for it. So this landowner, I was informed, was inflated his price, and it started much higher than that 21,000 I was told, and we said no, walked away, and in the end we agreed to 21,000. He wasn't looking to sell this ground, as what I've been told. We approached him asking to buy it. He was willing to split it off, and it wasn't what he really wanted to do, and that's how that figure came about.
So it wasn't appraised or anything that you guys came up with, because I think farm ground average in Muscatine County is a little over $11,000, and I just was curious to see how you guys derived at the 21,000. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he's going to throw a number and see if it sticks to the wall, and you guys didn't go with that. But I'm just curious to see how you derived to the 21,000, because it seems awful high.
Well, it is high for regular farm ground, but this is going to be a government facility. He wasn't willing to sell it. There was some back and forth, and that's what they agreed on.
Secondly, I got a question on, and I'm familiar with all your bond rules, or all your rules on the board, but don't we, when you exceed a certain number, don't you have to present a bond that gets voted on by the general public for the money you wanna spend within the county? Isn't that like it, over $750,000, am I correct with that?
It's if we need to borrow the money.
If you need to borrow the money, then you have to place a bond.
And I believe that number was increased to 900,000 or 950 with the current fiscal year. But there is a dollar amount that if we're gonna go above that and we need to borrow the money, then we have to go through a bonding process.
So you're not gonna borrow the money for this, for your half?
Of the land, it's intended to be paid for out of the jail commissary fund.
Correct, so that still leaves you with 800,000, are you gonna take that out of your general fund?
Me personally, go ahead.
I think what you're alluding to possibly is the total funding for the package.
Yep.
And I think that is yet to been determined. As I said, right now, we're looking at an option for a land purchase. This board has not made any decisions regarding funding for that. I'm probably of the opinion that were I to move it forward to a construction phase, that I would lobby this board to probably go to a bond, because then it would be a bond referendum that would go before the voters. Once you get a design and a selection and permitted and all that, there's a tremendous amount of process that would have to go forward after the land purchase.
Correct.
And it, by no means would it be considered a done deal. I think it's with the amount of input we've had, I think a bond referendum would probably, I'm not sure we would have to bond to do it, but I think I would probably be a proponent of bonding so that the voters could choose.
Because then it has to go to the
Then
general
it goes,
public for a vote.
and it has to be during a general election.
Yes, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you guys haven't projected a plan or anything, what it's gonna cost
I
to build
haven't
these
seen,
berms and
I haven't seen a
everything
final
else.
construction or an opinion of cost. We would normally get an opinion of cost from an engineer for a project like this. This board has not been presented anything like
Because
that.
what's been presented to me is from the packet, to build all these berms, it's gonna be quite costly, and you don't have enough dirt there to do it, you're gonna have to bring it in. You're gonna dig a pond, but you ain't gonna go that deep, I know what the water table is in that.
Apparently, there's a packet that was given out to everybody at the, or those that asked when they went to the zoning. I haven't seen that packet.
I haven't seen it either.
Well, it gives all the proposed sites and everything, I believe, Eric, of how all the
Submitted
process.
as part of the zoning application, anybody who's requested this public information, so I think that
Yeah. We haven't proposed what it's supposed to look like, the process of where all the sites that were, went into determining how it came down to 2 sites. There's lots of sites there, Eric, I think part of the decision was trying to keep it on a hard surface road. Well, if there's better sites available, why not put it on a gravel road, it might, I gotta drive down gravel every day, it don't hurt you guys do either. So if it fits in a little better and don't uproot, a bunch of other people. Another point was brought up there's one of our groups said there was 30 residents, within a mile of this proposed site. That's quite a few people that's gonna be affected by it.
Is that 30 residents, property owners or homes? Because
Homes is what I was told.
I've been told homes are at a mile or more out. So I hope that's accurate information. I've looked on Google Earth with the
I haven't done it
police chief.
myself, so I will look into that, but he said it's 30, and there is quite a few homes, and there's been one that was approved at the zoning commission just the other day, before we met with them, or tried to meet with them, I should say, but, and the other question I have, isn't there some conflict of interest with Mr. Mather, the person that owns the land? I know he has ties to the police, law enforcement. Isn't there a lot of conflict of interest? And I'm not saying that there was some inside information on how he purchased this land 1.5 years ago for $13,600, and now he gets to sell it, or proposed to sell it, or has sold it for $21,000.
Well, I think, I've read a number of concerns and seen them, and that's concerning to me that, against Mr. Mather. Again, this board had zero idea even where this parcel was, until an agreement was formed. So he, as an attorney, he wouldn't have known, and I don't believe he represents everybody in the county. So I don't think that would be, and he did recuse himself from the
Yeah, I've seen that.
decision once he knew it was one of his clients that was the potential landowner. So I think that, I don't think there's anything nefarious going on there, or anybody's trying to hold anything under. It's simply went through a process. I think the original group that did the vetting, or they came up with the parcels, potential parcels, was not even a Muscatine County. It was MSC, is that the name of the group? I don't even know where they're out of, quite frankly. We didn't select them, they were selected and went out. You know, I think trying to keep, what I would say, I think Aaron, you said I didn't care. Of course I care where things are. What I said is I don't want to be the ones making the pick. I don't want to come back and say, oh, you don't like me, you said to put it here. So they went, you know, a couple of years ago when they went through this process, they intentionally hired an engineering firm not in the county to look at it more from a, I don't know, a 10,000 foot view, not to taint the process, so to speak, because if we had a local firm, then you would get all those kinds of issues too. So I think that, I think Tony and Quinn, when they came with a proposal, had a good thought for a process. And, you know, I'm a process person. I think you go through a process, you know, we're at a land option point. I have no idea. The zoning commission is a 5-member board and they can do whatever they want, and whatever decision they make is the decision. If they don't approve it in the purchase agreement, the proposal it says it's null and void, right? It has to meet a number of criteria or it won't go forward.
For me, on the amount of currently to purchase that land, it's commissary money, it isn't taxpayer dollars. Going forward, if it isn't bonded like Jeff maybe recommended, I would only support going forward to continue to pay for it out of that fund as the process continues to get towards the finish line. I won't approve taxpayer dollars to pay for it.
Yeah, because I think there's other places we could be spending within the county for taxpayer dollars, if that's one of the concerns we all have. I mean, to be, you know, our taxes are high enough, we don't need it to be any higher. So, I think that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else that would like to address the board from the public? Step to the podium, state your name and address, and I'll give you 3 minutes.
Laura Curtis Kramer, 1670 North Mulberry Road. So just a couple of things. First, I think that this is introducing a nuisance to the county, to the area. That is an ordinance already. And so it's introducing a nuisance that wouldn't previously have been there. Secondly, although I know the CSR is not considered with this purchase for a shooting range, when you read about the CSR levels and for residential, it says it's of very high importance. So I think it should still be taken into consideration. Part of the responsibility of the Board of Supervisors and of the zoning committee is to protect our agricultural land in the county, which is considered a high asset for Muscatine County. And this is one of the highest areas. So I think that should be taken into consideration before purchasing land that's gonna be taken away from agriculture in Muscatine County. The people that live out there are either century farmers that have been there their whole lives, or the people that worked their butts off to buy that land. I mean, worked hard. And I think it's unfair to take that away from those people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Do I have another party that would like to speak? State your name and address, and I will give you 3 minutes.
North Isaac. I just have some questions. Has the ground been purchased?
No.
No.
Okay. And who started this process? Where did it begin? I mean, everybody seems to say
I believe it was the police department, the police chief that started it, and then I think he reached out to the sheriff and they moved forward together, if I understand it correctly.
So who paid the company that came in and picked the parcels, because they didn't do it for nothing?
There was the engineering study to put it together was a joint purchase, I think, if I remember, Nancy, in the 2019 timeframe?
Yes.
The Board of Supervisors paid 50% and the city of Muscatine paid 50%.
So you knew this process was beginning at that point to look for a facility?
This process has been going on since 2019.
2019, that was one of my questions. So why wouldn't you go through, I'm not an expert at any of this, but why wouldn't you go through all of the process of making sure the building can be built there before you purchase the ground?
We are.
Right, didn't you say that, I thought I heard something about regulations?
That's kind of the stage of the process we're at.
Does that make sense as a stage of a process to buy the ground and spend almost twice as much as what it's worth?
The ground is not purchased, it's an option to purchase. So now the question is,
Before.
can you,
Thank you.
put the proposed facility on that property. That's still a
So you
50-50
determine that
question.
before you purchase the property? You will determine?
It's an option to purchase.
It's one of the contingencies.
one of the
If
contingencies
that
on the
doesn't happen,
purchase.
the
Okay.
property won't be
Like if
purchased.
I buy your house, I would say it would have to appraise for the value there or more,
It's
right?
Real estate, I know how
Okay.
that works. But my question is, it seems to me that this has not been very transparent at all, the whole process. It's kind of all of a sudden, it's up for a vote, and it doesn't appear to me that our supervisors were very aware of what they were voting on. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because it was on your agenda and but I guess that's hindsight. I would say that you should have maybe tabled it till you did know more, but I don't know. And does it have to go through a public hearing? Another question I have.
For our
Does
decision.
what have to go through a public?
I don't know how is this gonna finish? Who makes the final call?
According to 657.9 Ohio Code, any property that is purchased and improved to be used for a shooting facility has to be approved by the zoning commission. That is a public hearing that was scheduled. As you're all aware, it was tabled, and it will be scheduled, it should be around the first Friday of next month. And that is, the purchase was contingent upon zoning approval.
Okay, I didn't realize
So yes,
that.
there
I'm
is a
sorry.
public hearing
Okay,
that
Thank
will be
you.
held on the proposed range facility where all the information, including parcel selection, I know they have a whole presentation they wanna make on how the consultant came down with that. That will be presented at the public hearing from the zoning commission.
okay, thank you.
The way
And
I
just had-
understand it, the supervisors, the contingencies are the city council and the zoning committee. If all three of those things come together, they can move forward to purchase the ground at that time, right?
Well, I didn't draft the purchase authorized, I've seen drafted, but it is based on zoning approval. The purchase authorized, like many other real estate transactions involve some sort of contingency.
And then I just had another thought or something to throw out there. I live just east of the Isaac Walton League, and yes, I do hear it till 10 o'clock every night they're out there shooting. And then, so now I'm gonna be a mile south of this, or right around a mile south of this. That concerns me. It concerns me that my property values are gonna go down. I too have lived there all my life. I'm the fourth generation in my family home. And it bothers me that there's gonna be danger for my neighbors. And I also just wonder, isn't there somewhere else we could train if it's only 30 or 40 days a year that would not cost this much money and I know you're saying it's not taxpayers' money, but I guess in my heart of hearts, I feel like it's going to end up being some taxpayer money. Aren't there facilities nearby that could be utilized for this, even if we have to drive 3 hours or 2 hours? It's 30 days a week.
Currently, a lot of this training that's required outside of shooting for our law enforcement, they go to other cities or states, and that sometimes costs $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for that week training when they're gone. I think the police chief and some others were just out in Denver or somewhere in Colorado a week ago with this type of training. And when they're gone, when our officer's gone, we also have to cover a lot of overtime to cover their hours when they're gone. So when we send those officers for the required training, it costs the taxpayers, the departments, a lot of money for those type of trainings. If we move it here, that will alleviate some of those other costs.
But I do believe there's closer than Denver, first of all. And secondly, it takes a lot of overtime for $2 million. And also maintaining that facility is not gonna be a reasonable, I mean, I just feel like it is gonna come back to taxpayer money. And I don't think it's a responsible way to use our taxpayer money. That's my opinion, so.
Thank you.
Somebody wrote their phone number. It's not mine.
Do I have another person that would like to speak?
Because I'm gonna speak real quick.
State your name and address, please.
Hello, my name's John Kramer. I live at 1670 North Mulberry Road, Muscatine. It's probably gonna be about 2.5 miles maybe west of this facility. And, wow, it's been quite an ordeal here. Basically, I'm up here to ask that you guys reconvene and resend your answers on the selling of this property. I understand that you were advised not to, but I'm asking you guys to go behind doors and resend your answers, and I have reasons why. First is, I was just asked is that I'm kind of surprised that you guys didn't get to see this packet right here that they were proposing. Second is, I can't believe that you didn't go out and look at the property itself, or maybe even investigate it more. The other thing that I have concerns about is you talk about going to Colorado for training, which I find this crazy, since Iowa should have a facility somewhere in this state that should probably save more money. I mean, crime rate's high in Des Moines and other places, that you think they would have some training that could help smaller cities like ourselves with some training like this. Moving forward, here are my bullet points on why I'm asking for this. First one is that the notification. I didn't get any notification on this at all. And I live less than a mile or about a mile away from Isaac Walton's, and I listen to them shoot every week, all summer long. They were only supposed to do it Tuesdays and Saturdays, and now it's become Wednesdays for the kids at school, which I support the kids. I also support the training facility for police officers and sheriffs and our SWAT team. I'm completely for it. But what I'm against is the noise and my quality of life where I'm at. The second thing I'm concerned about is the livestock and the kids that are going to be in that area. I'm worried about their safety. Not only am I worried about their safety, I'm also worried about that hard surface road and all the traffic on it and people driving by. So that's my concern. I think a gravel road would be more effective, less traffic, less safety issues. Second of all, it's been mentioned, so some of this might be repetitive, is the soil. It's a top grade soil. You heard that the rating for it's very high. You also heard that the water table is high. So my concerns there is shooting lead and abatement, and then heavy rains and flood water, and that lead getting into the water table, that lead getting into the water runoff, and potentially even going down to the Cedar River. So even though that might take a long period of time, my concern is lead and the cost that it will have to abate that lead to prevent any toxins. Let's see, what else do I have here? Century Farms. I have great concern for the Century Farms. I counted 3, there might be even more in that area. So those people spent their livelihoods from generations to accrue that land and to carry it and hold on to it as long as they have through some really tough times through our government and economies. And the noise, of course, is the biggest one for me. I can hear the West Liberty races, which is farther away. I can hear semis on the bypass. Those are low noise levels. I can hear airplanes when the wind is right from the airport. Again, that's a low noise. But when Isaac Walton shoots, it's about as loud as I am talking right here, right now. That's how loud I hear it. And it's an average of 3 shots per hour on Tuesday from 3 p.m. till 10 p.m. So if I wanted to have a cookout, I hear that bang. Three times every 10 seconds. It is distracting and annoying. And on Memorial Day weekend, that Isaac Walton's had shooting going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday every evening. So I was trying to have my grandkids over and my mom and dad and my wife's mom and dad, and it was just a nuisance. So that's another bullet point. I'm just gonna review here real quick and I'll be done. Livestock, blacktop, soil upgrades. That looks like about it. I just wish that the basic 2 things, key takeaways, is to have you guys rescind this decision based on the communication that we all had, because none of these people knew, including myself, until right after you guys made the decision. I'm sad that had happened, but otherwise we would have been in here sooner. And the second is just the noise, and we're worried about the safety of everybody around there. So you really need to take that into consideration, how close you are to homes, roads, everything. So with kids and livestock and driver buyers. So with that, I want to thank you all. I know it's not an easy job, but I appreciate the time to speak on behalf of my community out in the country. So thank you.
Thank you. Do I have another individual who would like to address the board at this time? State your name, address. I'll give you 3 minutes.
2460 155th Street.
Make sure that the girls have got that.
They probably remember me. Did you get it
If you could say it into the mic.
or? Okay. Deanne Reed, 2460 155th Street.
Thank you.
I just have 2 questions, and I don't think you will have this answer. When they started eliminating property, why was gravel roads eliminated? That was one of the criteria. The other one was mileage to the site. As long as it's in Muscatine County, the mileage shouldn't be a factor if it's a proper site where maybe there aren't as many houses around. And the third one was, there seems to be property that's zoned industrial down around the city of Muscatine Power and Water, and Kent and GPC own some property down there, and there seems to be some property that possibly could have been checked into. It's surrounded by industry, and it's zoned industrial. It's owned by individuals at this time. I think there's like four parcels. So those are my three things. How they were eliminated without other considerations.
What I was told, there was about around 13 locations that would work under the guidelines that were set from the firm that found those spots for us. Out of those 13 locations, when the chief reached out to all of them, nobody except 2 was interested in doing something with their property. The one had 80 acres, wanted to sell all 80 acres, and that would have been, like I said earlier, in the tune of maybe around $1 million, and that was off the table. This was the second and only remaining option that they reached out to this landowner, and he was willing to make some movement on splitting his property off.
But all 13 of those, and I could be incorrect about that, none of them were on a gravel road because that was already set aside.
So I don't know all the contingencies they put in place on what locations would be appropriate.
Well, that's what I said, you
I
might
didn't
not
see
have
that
the answer.
information, but what I have been told is they wanted a hard surface road, and to be honest with you, me personally, maybe they should have opened it up to off a gravel road, because many of the places they shoot now are off gravel roads, and they probably should have opened that up so we had more options. For whatever reason, they didn't, and these are the spots they came up with, and the landowners on at least 10 or 12, I'm told, didn't want to have a conversation with selling any of their property.
Well, if you lived there, you wouldn't want to sell it because you wouldn't want the noise, so. But what about down where there's the industrial parks?
So I think where you're talking is off of gravel, if I'm thinking about the
I
right
think it's-
location.
I could
So
be
that may
wrong,
not
but
have
I
been
think it's-
considered, and I don't know if grain processing or Hahn or some of the others in that location would have even been willing to sell. I don't think they was approached.
Okay.
Because I don't think it met the criteria that was given for this company to try to find a spot.
Well, according to the packet, anything that was a municipality was withdrawn and that property was within that. So it was all of Muscatine and surrounding, and swath of surrounding area. I just think some things shouldn't have been eliminated and before they looked at what was around it. Like I said, I didn't think these would have the answer to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board on an issue?
Can I have you ask you guys one more question? Frank Nelson property where they used to shoot at, were you ever approached them? Because the reason the Frank Nelson, you bring that up, well, we've had a shooting range in our neighborhood. It was kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it had natural berms, natural trees and everything around it, so it pretty well did a good job of dampening the sound. It didn't dampen at all, but did you approach the Nelson family to see if they want? I mean, there's a 40-acre tract back in there that could be purchased also.
I can't answer that.
I can't
I don't know if
answer
that
that.
was one of the parcels considered or not.
I mean, it's the same way you could approach them. and set their
I
price.
believe that Tony, the police chief and the sheriff both indicated that the Nelsons weren't, the people who now have control of that property didn't have any interest in continuing its use as a shooting range or selling it.
I've heard that name come up numerous times in this discussion, and I don't know if that was a public range or,
No,
Privately owned.
private.
Just for law
Straight
enforcement, it's
mile
privately
west
owned.
of the proposed site.
Used for
He was an avid
20,
gun, he was an avid gun guy.
many years.
Offered his
Yes.
range to the-
I'm not even sure when they stopped using it, or if it was just the police department or the sheriff or both.
21, 22 timeframe?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of
One
the,
Frank Path.
And Frank Bass.
it's been part of the issue that our law enforcement has, is that you know, we've had two very generous landowners over the years that have allowed our law enforcement officers to train on their property and do it free. That is diminishing. You know, as that gentleman passed away and his family's taken over, that's no longer an option. They currently are using a place down in Louisa County, which we have some issues with. You know, they have problems with ricochet, so you talk about when our officers go down there. Now, the county is that we're responsible for any injuries that they might sustain, and they do sustain injuries when you don't shoot in a properly done facility, you know. So again, I think that was part of the chief and the sheriff's thought. You know, I think that this is a, you know, challenging process, because I think we all want our law enforcement to have a good, safe, well-done facility to train. The question is, where does it go and how do you get there? And I say, you know, I personally don't know all the parcels. I have, you know, and even the criteria that they utilized, I don't know how that was generated. This board wasn't involved in the generation of that. I don't know who was. I don't know who decided that. So that's, you know, we were just looked at for, would we be, you know, a funder, basically? Would you guys fund this facility?
Why do you think the Nelson family doesn't want anything else to do with the shooting? Is there?
I have no idea.
I knew Frank, but I don't know any of
around here.
I don't know any of the family.
As you guys as supervisors, why didn't you look at that packet and look at other proposed sites? Do some homework before we move the vote. That's my question to you guys as supervisors. You were supposed to be working for us. Yeah. Why did we not look at that packet? You guys all stated you have never seen it. That packet has all proposed sites. Very important. Do your homework for us.
I would have to say I missed the boat on that, and I wish I'd have known about the packet. I wasn't aware of it, and if I had known about it, I'd have looked at it
You as a
before.
supervisor moved it.
We moved the purchase, we didn't move the approval of the zoning.
I'm Chad Holiday, I live at 1571 North Isaac Avenue.
I'll
I
give it to
asked
you.
you, Danny, to table the vote, sitting right over there, due to the fact of the information that seems that you guys had wasn't accurate at the time. To table the vote, move on, get some more information, you chose to vote it in. So your excuse is not good enough. You didn't do your job. Simple as that. Thank you.
Scott, I might be able to shed a little light on the process. I think there's a lot of questions, just to help understand
Sure.
the process, because these are all very valid questions, very valid points, when it comes to a facility like this. As I mentioned, 657.9 is the state code language that requires a review and approval by the zoning commission. At the zoning commission hearing, we anticipate a very large comprehensive presentation by the sheriff's department, city engineer who was involved in some of the proposed range design, and the police chief, that will thoroughly go through the process selection, the parcel selection process that you're all very interested in. Because state code charges the zoning commission with review and approval authority, it would actually be quite inappropriate for these people to weigh in too much, as there would be risk of them creating influence on the zoning commission, which is an independent quasi-judicial board appointed by the Board of Supervisors to make land use decisions. You wouldn't want them weighing in favor of this proposal any more than we would want them weighing in ahead of time to place undue influence on a board that is selected specifically by state code for this purpose. Again, all very valid questions that I think should be raised to the group that makes the decision. The parcel selection process, there's a whole packet that several of you have on that. You'll have plenty of opportunity to ask questions like why wasn't this part of the county considered the gravel road versus paved road? I do want to tell you folks, the budget and funding mechanism is not under the purview of the zoning commission, so it is very appropriate that you would come to this board with those types of questions. But that is not something that, when the hearing is held, that the zoning commission will be able to answer at all, because they are not responsible for funding. That is your elected officials. So the process is the zoning commission has to do the review and approval. It's in state code, and for these folks to comment and weigh in one way or the other too much would actually be quite inappropriate on the process. Funding, very valid questions, but the hearing will cover all that. It's obviously an open hearing. Again, very valid questions and statements to bring up that I anticipate will be addressed. There will be people there that could speak to the process, including the selection of the firm, that type of thing. But we will be scheduling another public hearing on the zoning commission, which is the appropriate board on that. So, is there any other questions on the process? Because I know it gets a little confusing because sometimes the Board of Supervisors has review authority on certain things, sometimes they don't. But that is the process.
I got one, Eric, on the CSR and anything else that pertains to the ground, that pretty much means it's a government facility. It's good for you guys, but we gotta follow all those guidelines to build out there. If it's a government facility, you don't have to.
It's, a government facility is exempt from the definition of outdoor shooting range that would include public ranges, you know, that someone, the private citizen might choose to develop. That part is true, and so, but it's my understanding that there's not a CSR criteria. I'd have to go back and look in the ordinance, but it's not. And again, I don't want to get into speaking too much ahead of the public hearing process either, because they have their opportunity to make their full presentation, and then you have your opportunity, obviously, to question anything they present, certainly. So I don't want to speak on their behalf. I have no influence on it. I receive their application, disseminate it, schedule the public hearings. I don't have a vote in it. We just make sure that the hearings are done by state law, that information is received so that you folks can have access to it and is presented in a lawful fashion.
Eric, you're gonna have the public hearing in a bigger facility?
That's our intent. I'm hoping, you know,
Yeah,
something
it'll be-
like Discovery Center where we could accommodate
That'd be
150
nice.
people. You
Yeah.
know, because we want the reason we couldn't have it, there was gonna be people in the hallway and it's not a fair process. If you can't hear the questions that are being asked and the answers are gonna be given, it just has to be an area where everybody can be heard and can hear what's being said. So we're gonna we kind of have a better idea how many people might be interested, so we're gonna work hard to get a facility that can accommodate anybody that has any interest in it.
Does the government, along Tim's question, like, does the government also have, they don't have to pay attention to the rules of splitting a 40 or an 80, or you can just split 20 off for whatever you want?
No, there's state code language that addresses subdivision of parcels, so.
So that the government doesn't have,
No, we would. We're subject to subdivision requirements. Yep. If a subdivision is required, the zoning commission has to review that proposed subdivision. It's my understanding there's 60 here, so I think the piece they're looking at is a whole 40, and they're carving 20 out of it, which would be considered a first split, so it wouldn't trigger a subdivision.
And I would make a comment that I've read some comments about the mud turtle and the Nature Conservancy and a number of things. And I would say, depending on the funding mechanism, which is down the road possibly, if it moves forward at all, we are probably held to a higher standard than an average landowner. So if there's any federal funds involved, we'll have to do archaeological studies, we'll have to do endangered species studies. There's a whole number of items that will have to be done that would have to pass that hurdle. If it's not federally funded, if there are no federal funds, we still have to go by state rule, and I know, Brian, you probably know more than I. The engineer would be better to tell us what, but believe me that any environmental concerns or that with the ground, we will be held to a high standard on if construction moves forward. But again, this is a land option at this point. It's really not a purchase. It isn't purchased until and I can't remember, there were more than one contingencies on it. I don't recall in the actual agreement. There were 4 or 5.
I got a comment for Eric. So when I bought that was split when I bought it. So it was one whole big parcel, and they split the timber off for me.
So that's the north. You're the north quarter of the split. I believe the presentation depicts the range on the south quarter section. So the 20 acres that would be split is a different quarter than what your timber was split out of. So this will be considered the first split of that quarter. Yours was the first split of that one. This would be the first split.
Okay. One other question, because I'm not familiar with all these laws. Under the Iowa code, you said about with shooting ranges and government shooting ranges and stuff. So
they don't have to pertain to the CSR rating, or, you know, it's not part of in the mix or whatever. So this whole decision is basically just based off location. Is it you or
No, it's the zoning commission.
the zoning commission?
It's a really somewhat frustratingly vague section of code that doesn't assign a real strict criteria for review to the zoning commission. It just assigns them as the lawful body to review and approve. My belief is it's because the zoning commission in a county is the commission that is appointed by the Board of Supervisors, a group of citizens that is charged with reviewing proposed land uses within the county. So they're well versed on how our overall land use outlook for the county. Every county's different in their land use. Some preserve farmland more strongly than other counties. I'm sure you're aware, across the state of Iowa, there's very different zoning laws. So you can have your own zoning laws under Iowa Code 335. It doesn't say which ones to apply. It's up to the county to apply their comprehensive land use plan. And the zoning commission is the group that deals with land use in Muscatine County. So I believe that's why the state code, when they enacted that, said your zoning commission should be the one to look at it. If there isn't zoning in a particular county, some counties don't have, then it kicks it back to the Board of Supervisors, but we do have a zoning commission. That's why it's on their agenda.
And that would be,
Thank you.
if you recall, a number of years ago, I don't remember when it was, the Conservation Board had proposed to put a public shooting range on some FEMA property that the county owns down off of Jasper, down in the Iron City Avenue area. The zoning commission rejected that plan. So it was that zoning board's decision. They rejected that plan. Now, you know, as I've heard comments, why wouldn't you put this one there? The law enforcement, again, because of the nature of the facility, when we get ground from FEMA, it's deed restricted. So there's very, very little you can actually do with it. You're not allowed to put any permanent structure or any structures on it at all. Berms would go and things like that, but you wouldn't be able to, a facility like this, you could not put on a FEMA granted land.
How high are the berms?
20 foot.
20 foot? So that'd be an eyesore out there.
How wide?
Uh,
How wide is the berm?
I don't know, I haven't.
I don't know, the visual abstract of looking at that from anybody's property has any meaning, but along with the noise, that would be kind of a pretty ugly piece of land to look at day in and day out, especially if you are adjoining property. That's just my opinion, but my concern is more of the safety aspect and the noise. I mean, that's, to me, is extremely critical.
Eric, thank you for explaining, like, what question we could ask of the supervisors and what they can answer and whatever, so that makes a lot more sense. But I think we're still, as a public, still concerned with how you guys can move forward on a purchase option, or whatever you wanna call it, on a piece of land you don't know much about.
Well, so we take the recommendations of all the different entities, whether that's zoning, coming to us and telling us what they got, the police chief, the sheriff. So we took all that into consideration. This started in 2019, much before I was ever on the board, and I was catching up on some of this. So we did our due diligence. We get given information in our packets. We looked that over, and we make the decision on moving forward on that ground. We didn't know what piece of ground that is. And as far as Chad saying we're doing our job, part of our job is to protect the citizens and make sure our law enforcement can do that. And when we look at the greater good of the community, that's how we make the decisions and that's how we do our job. That doesn't mean we ignore the landowners around that are involved, but to do our job, Chad, is to make sure that we're protecting the community and our county.
Go find a big hillside to shoot in.
What's that?
Go find a big hillside to shoot into.
I never said
But
anything
it's
about
just
them.
not that simple.
I didn't say anything about the police not doing their job. I respect them 100%. We're all for this facility. Find a different place. It's simple as that.
And that's part of the zoning process.
I support the
Again,
cops. My daughter was at Weed Park this summer when there was an active shooter, and guess who came running? The cops. My daughter came home. I'm very thankful for that. So I had a first-hand experience of when you call the cops and you need them, they're there for you. Absolutely, they are. I support them 110%. We already listened to one gun range out there. We don't need a second one. Well, matter of fact, we have two. Some of these people. I personally can't hear Nelson's, so I'm not going to speak and say I can't.
Is that even still active?
Not anymore, but you could hear it when, Sure.
So, I'm just disappointed that you didn't have that packet. I think you could have done.
Well, unfortunately, that sounds like it isn't part of the process.
I think it would actually undermine the process for this board to have been overly involved in review and recommendation of the process. I think we all have to trust the process. And again, all very valid concerns and comments that you're all making. There is a proper venue to introduce those. If these folks became too involved in the approval, if someone would claim foul that they unduly influenced the decision, whether that's pro or con, there's a process. They're left out completely. They don't have final say, the zoning commission does.
Same with Matters, he's left out.
Yeah, they don't get to vote on approval. The zoning commission vote, according to state code, is the only vote that matters on it.
If we would've advertised and wanted a shooting range somewhere, if you guys would've advertised at 21,000, I think you would've had a lot of ground come up for options. Can we advertise? I think a lot more ground and timber ground would've probably popped up out of the woodworks.
But it wouldn't have been suitable for the application.
Don't know that if we don't ask.
Potentially.
Cause it
Potentially could've.
also states there's like 74 initial properties, and for one reason or another, it got narrowed down to whatever, you know, gravel road or whatever, but initially it was, I think, 74 sites in this packet, Eric, is what it said. And some of them were landlocked, I know, there's some things we weren't gonna get it, but I think there was maybe some other options we could've looked at, or before you went ahead and voted yes, I guess, is my thing too.
Again, I believe their intent is to give you a very comprehensive explanation of the parcel selection process. That was what they hired the consultant to do, and you probably have very valid questions on the process itself and parcels that were excluded, parcels that were included and reviewed. That's an independent process that this board really shouldn't have anything to do with if it's going to be at the discretion of the zoning commission. Purchase offer is subject to approval. It doesn't go through, as they've stated, if it's not approved, so no tax dollars or commissary dollars are obligated if it's denied.
Well, if that's the case, then, Eric, the way you say all that, I got some swamp ground I'll sell for 21,000 an acre. If they're not gonna look at it or look at the packet of where it's at, I mean, seriously, I don't mean to make light of the
Well,
project here, but that's
why,
just where we're at.
but the sheriff and the chief were involved with receiving the process from the consultant. The consultant was given some ideal criteria to review and narrow it down to potential parcels. And obviously, swamp ground probably wouldn't have made the cut for a number of reasons, but.
Probably not, but they're not reviewing or never seen where the ground even was, so.
I knew exactly what the property was, so, that's
Once
not,
the offer,
that's not a fair statement.
once
I know
the offer
exactly, I
was
mean-
made, we all knew where it was, certainly.
You said you haven't been out there to see it.
Huh?
You said you've never seen it.
Never knew where it was.
You never knew where it was. You just said that.
I did not know it prior to approval of the option. Once we saw the option, I knew what the property was, certainly.
When did you see the option?
2 weeks ago, week ago, whatever. That was the first time we saw it when they,
On the 28th meeting?
yeah,
The day of that meeting?
yep. That's when we saw it.
Purchase order was in the packet for that meeting that went out on Friday.
So he's
You
done
can
it
make a
on
decision
Friday.
that quick.
That's what I asked them to do. Because of the amount of money they're spending.
The amount of money, knowing the property for one day, we can make a decision that quick.
Well, you have to trust the process, right?
So
And-
there was
and
a
so
process going on for 3-4 years, so like Jeff said, you gotta trust the process, and it wasn't like we just jumped on it and
Now it's
approved.
2 years, now it's 3 or 4.
Well, I just told 2019 it started.
You gotta trust the process. We gotta trust the guys we hired to do the job too. And so we don't want this here. That's plain and simple. We don't want it here. We're telling you guys as citizens that we don't want it here. Plain and simple. Like
Okay,
Chad said.
let me ask this question. How many people in this group, just by a show of hands, do not want to have a professional training facility in the county at all? Zero, zip, nada.
None of us ever said that.
No, I'm asking the question. I'm not insinuating that the statement was made. I don't see any hands in the air. I don't see any hands in the air. And with that being said, any place you go in the county, it's gonna be like Groundhog's Day. It's gonna be exactly the same, folks, exactly the same.
You 100%
Now,
sure?
I'm sorry?
You 100% sure it's gonna be exactly the same? I mean,
Less
I-
residents.
One lady talked about putting it down in, an industrial area, and I don't think those people would probably object as hard as we are.
Well, this is just a guess on my behalf,
Okay.
and that would be that $21,000 per acre value would escalate dramatically in that type of environment. That's just my guess. And I can tell everybody's not thrilled about the price of what this parcel is. You know, I mean, I can tell that, but everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody in this group, but I know most of you guys, and everybody understands that something's worth what another party will pay, especially for things that are not for sale. I believe that's a pretty common statement to make. I've not spoke much today, I've just listened, and that's what I prefer to do. And this has not come up, and I hadn't thought of it until this discussion. And what struck me was, don't want two gun ranges. What if an investigation goes into combining this facility at the Ike's property? I mean, that's just a thought. I'm just throwing it out there, folks.
I'm all for that, Scott. Just that last week, take your $2 million and invest in the Isaac Walton League. It gets your law enforcement taken care of. It gets all those kids taken care of. You bring in those trap tournaments are a lot of times 2 or 3 day long, and you bring in a lot of tax dollars with people coming in, and it increases the value of the sport around here. And then maybe open up to public. That way, it's a 3-party system here, and your taxpayers, I think, would be much happier paying for that. I showed you where I live. I'm okay with Isaac Walton League. I hear that all the time. Moved out there, I knew it was there. I hear it all the time. We don't want another one right next to us.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
You know, that's just a thought. I don't think there's enough ground there on that Ike's property. But I'm just throwing it out there. What people
That's the same way with
may or may not be, what someone, it's just for discussion. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, I know when the Ikes shoot, I know the time frames when they shoot. I know what the kids do out there. My grandson has shot for the Wilton team for a number of years here, and he just graduated, and he's gone to shoot on scholarship at a college in Missouri, and so I'm well informed on that situation, and that's what drew me to just throw this out here to the group. But to look at that, there would probably have to be, I'm sure the Ike's property is not large enough, and there would have to be additional acres purchased for what we're speaking of. That's another fish to fry. You know.
There again, the Ice Club was a good location because it had natural berm. They didn't have to spend a lot of money there, and that's why I feel there ought to be another facility or place that we could build this, that's got natural berms, natural trees, like the Nelson property, that was out of sight, out of mind. You know, you're going to put it right on F-70, you gotta build the berms, which is not gonna be cheap to build.
No.
And
And I'm just thinking out loud, you guys. I mean, I'm not saying this is what we should do or shouldn't do. I just listened to the group, and I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I think Chad and I had this discussion. I think there's a lot of things that could have been done different. You know, obviously, we didn't design the range, we weren't a part of that process. But I would hope that, you know, the work with the law enforcement group, understand the needs and say, you know, what's a potential solution here? You know, is noise the issue? Is safety the issue? What is it? Because I think, you know, I think about, you know, we just had a situation down in Columbus, right, where the local team was instrumental in apprehending an armed robber, right, that was loose in a neighborhood, trying to pose as a delivery man. You know, you look at back at the Uvalde school where people showed up to a situation and weren't well trained and didn't know what to do. I don't ever want to see that happen in my communities. And I think we have to take whatever steps necessary to make sure that we can assure that we have public safety is number one. I mean, that's the number one role of government is public safety. It's not protecting farmland. It's not, you know, it's protecting public safety.
Just a quick thought, just like Scott, thank you for your opinion, is, I know we're doing a county thing here, and it's all for Muscatine and the sheriffs, but is there anything out there that we could do an outreach to like Ken Reynolds and do a state thing? Because I think all communities, all cities should have maybe a statewide facility, you know, somewhere. Maybe that'll help, and that'll reduce us from having to travel across state lines. We can keep it in our state, and that way, I know Muscatine is not rated the worst crime city, but there are other cities that are worse off that maybe could use the same, so maybe we could pull together and do a state shooting range / training center, and then have it be a statewide thing instead of just a county thing. Has any thought gone into that?
Well, the issues with that, John, is when you give that control to other departments or cities or counties, it becomes challenging for your law enforcement to use that facility when it's needed. So I don't know if I'm crazy about that idea, but
It's a scheduling thing.
Yeah, there's 99 counties.
I think that would be a great conversation with the sheriff, because I know he had spoken about local sheriff's offices, and I think there's an initiative in Lynn County, I think there's an initiative in Scott County, in a number of counties to try to get training facilities in place. Not easy to do, right, for a lot of reasons. And I think that, you know, I think we, you know, one of the things I think Muscatine County has a rich history of is working well with our other agencies and areas to try to do what's best for people.
Maybe it's a regional thing.
To go with Danny though, I think it depends on the size of the facility, you know, to allow you your time. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions that was posed early was, would we look at other agencies, would we? And I think the chief and the sheriff were both pretty adamant that they felt that they would want to control the facility. They don't necessarily want the highway patrol or what, you know, any other individuals that would be in control of the facility, because then you lose that local control that I think we all want. Because, you know, I've heard the chief say, well, if we're gonna have an outdoor shooting, we could put a flag or have a signal so neighbors would know, hey, this is what we're doing today. And I'm not sure you'll get that working at a state level.
Well, just to follow up with that, I went down to Texas A&M. I'm a volunteer firefighter for Bear down there, and I'm confined space rescue, I'm hazmat, I'm firefighter 1. Texas A&M has a wonderful facility down there at their college campus, and they have military, they have the Army, they have the Air Force, and then they've got all kinds of other firefighting corporations that have their own E-teams. They come down there, they schedule this, they do all this extreme training down there. So, I mean, they do a wonderful job down there. They have a ton of knowledge, and they do train the trainer. And that's why I'm suggesting maybe going to statewide, and I feel like it could be done.
You know, that's an interesting thought. I mean, Bobby Kaufman, had a conversation with Bobby here last week, and, you know, his comment was good luck with a range, but I think Bobby also understands, you know, law enforcement and the challenges today in law enforcement and acceptance of, you know, you have to train them, we just have to do it. I think there's probably a thought there that you could do something. I don't know, you know, we've been blessed, I always think, in Muscatine County, because we have some outstanding, you know, I know that down at the Grain Processing Corporation, they've retired buildings that they've allowed the police department to come in and do active shooter training in the buildings before they're demolished. You know, but you only have so many old buildings you're gonna demolish, and, you know, do you wanna count the next generation of law enforcement? So how do you kind of create a process for that? And I think that's an interesting thought. How could you do that?
That's another thought too, Jeff. I mean, if you just want to build and have an indoor range, I'm sure there's buildings here within the city limits that could be made into the range where they could use and be, you know, used too.
Yeah, they had an indoor range in the city for a number, but the Lewis brothers, I think, put it in, and it didn't last long, and I don't know why.
Health reasons, that was my uncle's.
Couple, 3 years, yeah. Yeah.
Health issues, they were colder when
Yeah.
they built that. I wonder why the city didn't consider purchasing that when that came up for sale.
It went for a song.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have anyone else that would like to address the board as an individual of the public? Anyone else have a comment that they'd like to make throughout the discussion that we've had here? It's kind of like having a sale here, going once, going
I have
twice.
one more comment. As far as the price, I think if it's a government facility, it should be subject to FAR, which is Federal Acquisition Regulations, and it needs to be fair and reasonable pricing for government facilities. And so I think that needs to be looked at, to see if it meets those requirements for FAR.
Okay.
I got one more comment. So we talked about, we sent a bunch of police officers to Denver or
It was somewhere in Colorado a week ago. I don't know how many was out there. I know the police chief was. I don't know who was all with him.
So if they have to go all the way to Denver, does that mean the whole United States is going there for that special?
I don't know. I think there's different types of training that are held at different facilities around the country, and I'm not versed on what all that is. So there's different facilities that provide, whether it's forensics, whether, you know, it's not going out there for shooting. There's other intensive training that these officers need to do well at their job.
So you don't think if we build a $2 million facility, we won't be approached for active trainings like that? And potentially be more shootings and training out at this facility, if we build a $2 million one?
I think that was a question that was posed to the law enforcement, and, you know, the answer was, they do lots of training. The shooting, you know, from what I understand, is their intention with the shooting is for certification only. The facility, which you saw, there was some kind of a facility, I think, was in the plan, my understanding. The idea of the facility was then you'd have classroom training and be able to do for other use of force and other, you know, kind of non-lethal trainings that they might do. And I think they did say that they would be able to, you know, one of the things I think that would be nice, you know, most small communities really don't have the resources to do this, you know, so the Wiltons, the West Liberties, the Adolescents.
We'll say no to all them academies with this $2 million one?
What's that?
We'll say no to all them coming in and out, if they ask to come and train, we'll say no to all them?
No, I think his point was that they would be able to, if they're bringing in a training of some type, that they would be able to offer that regionally to other agencies. Obviously, Muscatine County agencies would get first choice, but if you're gonna bring in a trainer on, you know, I don't know, you know, I'm more involved in the mental health stuff here. We bring trainers in all the time, and we all the hospitals and clinics, and if we get training in that, we can get as many people into the seats as we can if we get professionals coming in from all over. And I think that would be their intention. But again, that would be something, you know, in a zoning hearing, I would challenge the you know, again, the sheriff and the chief, you know, what would you do? What would they look like? What are those trainings? Give me an example of one. I want to know what is it?
As far as that training at the facility, I think the hopes is other departments around the state or country may come, which would be a economic impact for our area. But for me, after all of this, the shooting aspect of that, the other training would be allowed. For me, the shooting aspect for other departments, I wouldn't approve.
Would you approve their off time, when they're off time? When they're off duty, would you be able to go out there and shoot?
Well, I think we have to put an ordinance in place if this ever comes together, and somebody said, the sheriff mentioned that officers could go out there any day and just shoot. We'd have to make it clear that that couldn't happen, that it was just a set time that they'd be allowed to do it, if it comes
I think
together.
Iowa code says there has to be hours of operation.
And what time I guess when would that come into play in the
Now,
process?
if this all comes together, I think we're 2 or 3 years before anybody's even firing a shot out there, so.
Yeah, but you'd want the ordinances in place.
We'd have the ordinance in place before we get to that final step, but that's down the road a ways.
Yeah. That can be a question asked at this planning and zoning meeting, because that'll be a large group and
again, you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission has pretty good, I'll call it power, right? Because it's a special use permit, correct, Eric? This is not a special use permit? Okay. So they may not have that much power in the operation. A lot of times if there's a special use permit, then they can put restrictions on operations or whatever. So this would not be, this is a permitted use in an A1 ag? Eric, no, yes, no?
It's not addressed in our local ordinance, it's
Oh.
exempted because it's government operated, it's only because of 657.9 that it
Oh.
goes in front of the zoning commission, so it's strictly from a land use perspective, long-term area use expectation standpoint.
Okay. All right. With that, do I have anyone from the public that would like to have 3 minutes to speak on an issue not pertaining to the shooting range? Seeing no one come forward, it is 10:26 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.